Hey everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. I'm your host, Disorderly Cone, and I'm extremely excited today because we're going to be building our very first tank here on Groove Builders. And Groovers, there are all different kinds of metal tanks out there from all different kinds of brands, and the Tiger 1 tank from Metal Earth is known for being a great beginner tank. Groovers, let's get down to the workbench and take a look at this package.
Alright Groove Builders, welcome to the workbench. We have our Metal Earth Tiger 1 tank in some pretty awesome classic Metal Earth packaging. For a lot of groovers out there, this is their first Metal Earth model they end up building, so I'm very excited to see what this contains. Let's go ahead and take a look at the back. On the back we have that classic Metal Earth logo, followed by some history on the Tiger tank. Just below that we have some instructions on how to build our model, and at the very bottom we have a QWERTY code that we can scan to get a 360 view of our model if we need it while we're building. Groovers, let's go ahead and open up the package. We have our instructions, and we have our metal. Ooh, look at that. Looks like 2 sheets, and look at the top of that tank. Very cool. I thought there was something weird inside the package, but I guess... Oh, look, there is something here. Oh, wow. That's cool. It's like the barrel to our tank. All right, Groovers, let's get building. Alrighty, Groove Builders, with our cutters in hand, our first instruction is to cut out parts 1 through 5 and form and connect them together. Now, if this is your first Metal Earth model, this might be a little bit confusing and intimidating. So, let's go over the instructions together. R2, can you give me a hand with that? That looks great, thanks R2. Now the first thing you might notice is the new Metal Earth logo at the top, and that my particular box was the original Metal Earth packaging. Now I did compare the 2 instructions together and they are exactly the same outside of the tool section at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and use the new instructions because if you're going to be building this model, you're most likely to see these ones right here. So starting at the top, you have that brand new Metal Earth logo, followed by a nice depiction of our Tiger 1 tank. Just below that, we have a QWERTY code that we can scan to get a 360 view of our Tiger 1 tank while we're building. Now this can come in really big handy for any kind of add-on detail that we're going to be placing onto our tank. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to determine how a part's supposed to go onto the model, which you can use this QWERTY code to figure out its orientation or how the piece is supposed to look. And yes, this can be very handy. Now just below our QWERTY code and to the left we have a picture of one of our pieces, and it's labeled showing us our tabs, our insertion holes, and our fold lines. It's very important that we understand what these are because this is the fundamentals of metal model building. So if this is your first model, I recommend studying this particular picture so that you can understand how your model is going to come together. Now right next door we have the all-important legend, and the first thing we see is the engraved side and non-engraved side symbols. Now these are pretty uncommon for most of the builds that we do, but when we do see them, it's just indicating that we need to make sure that we're putting the detail either face up or face down, depending on how the instructions are telling us to do it. Just make sure that if you do see these bubbles, that you pay extra close attention to how that part is being built. Speaking of paying attention, our next symbol that we're going to be looking at is the attention point, which is also uncommon in a lot of the builds we've built so far. If we do encounter this symbol, all it means is for us to pay a little bit closer attention to this particular area, because it could easily get scratched, broken, or it just might be a little bit difficult. Up next, we have the all-important circles and triangles. Now, Groovers, these are the most important symbols you're gonna find in your instructions, and they are literally everywhere. Make sure that when you see your circles, that you grab as much of the tab as possible in your tweezers and bend them down 90 degrees. When we see the triangles, you want to take as much of the tab in your tweezers as possible and twist them 90 degrees. The reason we want to follow our instructions is because these tabs often are being bent this way for a specific reason, either for structural integrity or for looks. Now groovers, at the end of your build, you can definitely go over and see if there's any tabs that you could hide or maybe make look better or less visible, but always while you're building, it's important to make sure that you follow the instructions. Now just to the right of our legend, we have the recommended tool section, and the first tool they recommend is a good set of wire cutters. Now groove builders, I definitely recommend a good set of wire cutters, because when you're cutting your metal pieces out, if you don't have a good set of wire cutters, you'll have little bits of metal left on your pieces, and this will make it really hard sometimes to get your tabs in the proper spot, and it will also make some of your pieces look a little offset. So getting a good pair of wire cutters is a good way to make sure you have a fine model at the end. Just below our cutters, they recommend some tweezers and needle nose pliers. Now groove builders, I definitely recommend both of these for building metal models. Now you can really use whatever you have around your house, but I recommend getting something that you're comfortable with, because this is what you're building your models with. And like a painter using a good paintbrush, you want to make sure that the tools that you're using are also good quality as well. The last thing you want to do is end up using some tools that might damage your model, so always keep in mind that you're dealing with shiny metal, and that if you're going to be using a tool, make sure it doesn't have any sharp edges on it that could damage the metal while you're building. Some other more advanced tools I like to recommend to model builders out there that are looking to make this a hobby is a doming set and some mandrel sets. These are great for helping you form some more difficult pieces more uniform, and they can really help you take your models to the next level, but again, they are not necessary. Moving right along, just below our recommended tool section, we have the all-important parts diagram. Now these diagrams are very important to us because they label where all of our parts are that we're going to be needing to build our tank. One thing I always recommend when it comes to building metal models is to take your two metal sheets, hold them up, and then orientate them to the two diagrams on this page. And the reason for that is so that it's very easy for us to be able to find the parts we need when we need them. Alright groove builders, I think that pretty much covers up our instructions. Let's move right along to figuring out what a Tiger 1 tank is. R2, you can take the instructions off now. R2? R2! Yes, you can take the instructions off now. Thanks, buddy. Okay, so groovers, I'm sure at one point or another you may have heard about the infamous Tiger 1 tank. It was a heavy German tank from World War II deployed in 1942 in Africa and Europe, usually in independent heavy tank battalions. About 1,347 were built between August 1942 and August 1944. While the Tiger 1 has been called an outstanding design for its time, it was over-engineered, using expensive materials and labor-intensive production methods. When it was introduced, the Tiger was the most powerful tank in the world. The 88mm gun was extremely powerful, and the heavy armor made it almost impervious to attack. Even though its fearsomeness was to grow to an almost mythical proportion, its combat debut was less than impressive. The Tiger was prone to certain types of track failures and breakdowns, and had a limited range by its high fuel use. It was expensive to maintain, but generally reliable, but it was difficult to transport and vulnerable to immobilization when mud, ice, snow froze between the overlapping and interleveled road wheels, often jamming them solid. This was a major problem on the Eastern Front in muddy season and during extreme cold periods. The tank was given its nickname Tiger by Ferdinand Porsche, and the Roman numeral was added after the later tank Tiger II entered production. Today, only about 7 Tiger 1 tanks survive in museums and in private collections worldwide, and the Tiger 131 tank at the UK's Tank Museum, which was captured during the North African campaign, is currently the only one restored and in running order. Hey R2, do you got that video ready to show the Tiger 1 tank in action? Great, okay groovers, take a look at this.
The gun is an 88mm, it's a very high velocity weapon. It is very similar to the 88mm flak gun. It's absolutely devastating. Although the Germans only built about 1,300 of them in all, you can see why most Allied crews were very nervous of them, because it's more fortunate. It's still using the same engine and gearbox that the original Tiger used, although we did actually have to modify the engine.
Pretty awesome, am I right, Groove Builders? The Tiger 1 tank is one of the most famous tanks ever made and has become a very popular subject for modelers, armored tank enthusiasts, and World War II historians. So I can definitely understand why the team over at Metal Earth chose to make this tank part of their line.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. You guys are just in time to check out my new modification to my Tiger 1 tank. Check this out. Pretty awesome, right? Alright, Groove Builders, this was my first tank, and I must admit this Tiger 1 tank was a lot of fun, and there was definitely a lot involved. Groovers, let's talk about it a little bit more in construction. My first point when it comes to building the Tiger 1 tank from Metal Earth is one that's shared with a lot of Metal Earth builders out there, and that is that these instructions can be a little bit difficult to read at times, especially when it comes to inserting the bottom and some of the wheel construction. I was a little bit surprised that the guys over at Metal Earth didn't edit some of the instructions to make them a little bit easier for us to read, especially because the Metal Earth instructions were re-released with a new logo and updated toolset. Nevertheless, outside of the wheels and the undercarriage, the instructions are pretty easy to understand, and of course, if you ever need a little help, you could always come back to this video. My second point is about all the tubes on this Tiger tank, and there's quite a bit of them, especially around the track area and on the top with all the little bits of add-on detail. Now, Groovers, putting this together can be a little bit difficult if you don't have something to help you form these correctly. Now, I had my dowel set as you saw me using on the screen, but a lot of people may not have that. But if you do have a good drill set around the house, this can be an excellent tool to help you get all of these shapes perfectly, so when they go on your tank, they look really nice. My third and final point is about the last few steps of building this Tiger tank, and that involves the bottom. This can be a little bit tricky, and I definitely recommend taking your tabs here at the top and twisting them temporarily while you attach the bottom. This just helps you keep everything sturdy and really helps you get everything into place, and you really want to grab as much of the tabs as possible when securing these last little steps. After everything is secured, then you can go back after and bend these tabs the way you want them. Now that is a good little tip, not just for the Tiger 1 tank, but for all metal model builds out there. It can really get you out of a tight bind. With that being said, Groove Builders, let's move on to build time. The Tiger 1 tank from Metal Earth took me about an hour and 45 minutes to build, with the majority of the time being spent along the tracks here and for the bottom. Now, Groove Builders, I expect most people to take about that amount of time to build this too. However, if you're having to bend all of the tubes here in the track by hand, you are definitely going to take a little bit more time. And finally, Groove Builders, my thoughts. Okay, Groove Builders, I know I say this a lot, but honestly, I loved building this Tiger 1 tank from Metal Earth, and especially after reading some builders' posts on Reddit, Instagram, and Facebook talking about how much they love building these tanks, I'm surprised it took me so long to build one. And now that I have, Groovers, I'm going to be building way more tanks on this show. These are so much fun to build, and I think it's because of all the varying detail along the bottom and top. If you're a new builder out there, you will definitely have a good time building this model, although it might be a little bit hard to follow the instructions at times. This little tank barrel here at the top is a really neat introduction to the Metal Earth business, and I would like to see what else they can do with the barrels in some of the other more difficult tanks. Alright, Groove Builders, that brings us to the end of the show. I had a really good time building with you, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button. For more videos like this, hit subscribe as well, as we got all kinds of really cool content coming out in the future. Until next time, Groove Builders, keep building. Okay, now we're gonna go blow up a wall.